So then, the EFL Championship season is heading into its final lap as most teams in the division have less than 10 games to go after the international break. Today, we are breaking down the promotion race and seeing who's going to be getting automatics from the Championship and who's going to be finishing in the EFL Championship playoffs. Before we get into the video then, guys, and talk about the teams involved and break down some of the numbers, make sure to share your thoughts down in the comments. Feel free to predict 1 to 6 who's going to finish in the top 2 and in the top 6 at the end of this season. We'll go for 1,000 likes on this one. It's free to hit the like button, so make sure to get involved. Whether you are a Championship fan or not, make sure to drop a like and subscribe while you're there. If you haven't already subscribed, get involved. It's free to do, and we're this close to 60,000 subscribers, so it would be amazing if you can subscribe. With all of that said, let's talk about the Championship promotion race. So then, the table beside me shows you the top 14 teams in the EFL Championship table right now, and we're also going to have a look at the Championship relegation battle in a future video. Like I say though, focusing at the top end of the table, I've just done a little cut-off for now between 14th and 15th, and we'll also talk about the possibility of the teams 12th, 13th and 14th of making it, because right now it doesn't look massively likely. In fact, what I'm going to do, looking at the amount of games played and points picked up, I'm going to colour coordinate the teams here, and this is what I'm going for. So then, starting at the top, I've got Leeds United, Leicester City and Ipswich Town in red there. As you can see, these three, top of the table, tightly packed together on the amount of points that they've got. Leeds United are top now, Leicester City still have a game in hand, and Ipswich Town are in great form. Right now, 1 point separates those three sides. After that, I've got Southampton in a sort of orangey colour because they're still in with a chance of making the top 2, but they're trailing in the race at the moment, albeit they have got some games in hand. Then you've got West Bromwich Albion, who I've got as a sort of dark yellow, but not quite orange, because I don't see them making the top 2 if we're being realistic, but they've got a much tighter grip on a playoff place than the teams below them. After that, I've put Norwich, Hull, Coventry and Preston in the similar sort of yellowy colour. Yes, Norwich have a 3 or 4 point gap over the teams below them, but they all have a game in hand. Coventry have to play Hull in that game in hand. Preston's game in hand is against Southampton, so that's going to be crazy. Then you've got Middlesbrough and Cardiff, who have got as a sort of lime colour. They're a little bit further down than Coventry, Preston and Hull, of course, and they have played an extra game, so certainly more like outsiders. And then even more outsiders, you've got Sunderland, Watford and Bristol City. The reason we're just mentioning them for now is because it is a mathematical possibility one of these three could still make the playoffs, but it's certainly a low probability right now. The next thing I wanted to look at then is projections based on points per game over the season so far. This isn't taking recent form into consideration, it's taking your whole season into consideration and playing out the points per game that you've already picked up. And as you can see there, Leeds, Leicester, Ipswich, the high 90s and over 100 for Leicester City because of their game in hand. Then you have Southampton in the sort of low to mid 90s with 93.3, West Bromwich Albion 79.8, and then it is quite close there between Norwich, Hull, Coventry and Preston. So the reason we're looking at the projection based on points per game right now is it gives us an insight into seeing what it will take to accomplish certain things. So yes, we are going to come on to form in a minute, which is a big factor, but when you take the entire season into consideration here, from the points per game they picked up from that, Leeds, Leicester and Ipswich are going to set the bar so high for the top 2, and I don't see it actually being much lower than 98, 97 to get to the top 2. So as you see there, Leicester City projected to get over 100 points, Leeds United 99.2 and then Ipswich 98.1. Southampton still in with a chance, but looks like they would just fall short based on their points per game. And then the same for the playoff race. As you can see, Norwich could be landing on about 73, 74 points this season. So that gives us a rough guide as to what it could take to get that place this season. Obviously, this isn't set in stone and you can't get a decimal at the end of the season, but based on what we've seen so far this season, it could be around 73 to 74 points to get 6th, and therefore about 99, 100 points to get top 2. The next thing I wanted to look at then is the upside for all of these teams in the top 14 in the Championship. Now, the upside is the most points they could get by the end of the season. So if any of these teams won all of their remaining games, their remaining 8 or 9 games, this is the maximum points they would get this season. And as you can see, Leicester, Leeds, Ipswich, Southampton, all in the hundreds. West Bromwich Albion, noticeably a big gap there. 90 points is the most they could get this season. And that is the reason we are looking at this, just to distinguish what is realistic at the end of this season. season. So with West Bromwich Albion's highest possible points tally being 90 points, that's if they win every game from now until the end of the season. And knowing that we've just looked at a projection in the last table which has shown us it'll be about 98, 99 points to get top 2, I think we can rule out any teams below Southampton getting the top 2. And the same possibly applies for the playoffs here. As you can see there, Bristol City's maximum points they could get is 71 if they won all of their games. Watford and Sunderland both being able to get 72 if they won all of their games. And having looked at the last table, Norwich City are projected to get about 73, 74 points come the end of the season. So I think we can start distinguishing some things. The first thing we're going to distinguish then is it will be 2 of the top 4 to get automatics. Bar some ridiculous points deductions coming out of absolutely nowhere, it's pretty much set in stone that it will be 2 of the top 4 promoted automatically to the Premier League. And then when it comes to the playoff race, of course West Brom are in a strong position. Norwich, Hull, Coventry and Preston are tightly packed, and I think Middlesbrough and Cardiff are the last teams we can just about take seriously in the playoff race. I think the 5-point gap there between Cardiff and Sunderland is the cut-off now for the top 6. Yes, of course, if Sunderland, Watford or Bristol City turn around and win their next 3 games in a row, we will give them a mention and say, hang on, they're not out of this. And of course, there is that possibility that a Norwich, a Hull and Coventry could all lose their next 2 or 3 games. But right now, just looking at things for how they are, it does look like the playoff race is between 5th and 11th. But as I say, West Brom look like they're in a strong position. Cardiff and Middlesbrough have a lot to do to get in there, but it's not impossible. So then, are you keeping up? Let's move on to the next thing, which is the Championship form table. And we're going to look at the top end of the Championship form table based over the last 10 games, which I think is a pretty good sample size to look at right now. And Leeds United are red hot. 9 wins in their last 10 with 1 draw away at Huddersfield. 28 points, churning out 2.8 points per game over a 10-game sample size is absolutely incredible. And of course, if they keep that up over the remaining games, they will get over the line. The power is in their hands right now. They are top of the table. Yes, Leicester have a game in hand, but so long as Leeds don't let Ipswich get through, then they will still get top 2. But right now, if I'm being honest, I do think Leeds United could win the league, and that was my original prediction from the start of the season. Leeds United fans, I've had faith in you this season, and it looks like you might just snatch the crown right at the end. Of course, the main thing is to get top 2 and just get promoted. Being champions is an added bonus, but it could be what Leeds United get. After that though, Ipswich Town with the 2nd best form. There is a bit of a gap there, 6 points between Leeds United over the last 10 games and Ipswich, but Ipswich Town are the 2nd best team in the Championship right now based on form, and that is good enough for top 2. If they keep doing what they're doing and Leicester City don't pick up their levels, then Ipswich would also get over the line with Leeds United. 4th place Southampton sit 3rd place in the form table, so despite them not playing many games recently because of postponements and FA Cup fixtures and whatnot, they're still certainly in the equation, and with those games in hand, they could be dangerous, albeit I will say right now, I would rather have points on the board than games in hand. But you can't count Southampton out, and if they have a good sprint in the final 10 games, they might possibly make it. Next up then, and you have loads of the playoff chasers with West Brom with the 4th best form, they are flying. Norwich with the 5th best form, Hull City with the 6th best form, Preston with the 7th best form, Coventry with the 9th best form, and in between that, of course, you have Leicester City with the 8th best form, which really isn't that bad, but considering the teams they're going up against are right at the top of the form table, it is seeing Leicester City lose some ground. It's been an incredible season really, because Leicester City were so far clear, you thought they were afforded a little wobble in the season and they'd still get over the line. Well, they have had a little wobble at times this season, and Leeds and Ipswich have pounced on it, so it is still very close, and Leicester do need to pick up the form. So then let's have a look at the Homewood Stretch, and these are the fixtures for the final games of the season. And Leeds United, top of the table, go away to Watford, host Hull City, go away to Coventry and host Sunderland in the next 4. They are 4 pretty tricky games on paper there, and then it's Blackburn Rovers at home, Middlesbrough away, QPR away and Southampton at home. I am really fascinated by those last 2 games there for Leeds United. QPR could be fighting for their lives to stay up, and as for Southampton, if they can get themselves within striking distance of Leeds, then that will be a massive game. However, it also could be an anti-climax if there's nothing riding on it. As As for Leicester City, they go away to Bristol City, they host Norwich and Birmingham before back-to-back away games at Millwall and Plymouth. They then host West Brom and Southampton before going away to Preston and hosting Blackburn. For me, I would say that's a pretty mixed bag there for Leicester City. Most of their tricky games are at home, so I suppose that's something. The run of games against West Brom, Southampton and Preston will be interesting in the final stretch of the season there. Ipswich Town go away to Ewood Park, Blackburn Rovers after the international break before a very tricky run of games, including Southampton at home and Norwich away, and then Watford at home, Middlesbrough at home, Coventry away and Hull City away before ending the season at home to Huddersfield, who could also be fighting for survival on the final day. Plenty of tricky games in there for Ipswich Town, I must say. I'm certainly looking at the Southampton and Norwich games and thinking that's a big week for Ipswich Town. As for Southampton, as you can see, they have the most fixtures out of the teams in the top 4 here, and if they can hit form at the right time, they might find themselves sneaking into a top 2 place. With Southampton's fixtures, you will notice they still have to play Ipswich, Leicester and Leeds United, the top 3 all above them, but given that they are now chasing, that gives them an opportunity to take points off them and close the gap. For Southampton, it's Middlesbrough, Ipswich, Blackburn, Coventry, Watford, Preston, Cardiff, Leicester and Stoke before a final day trip to Leeds United. If they are within 3 points of them, that could be massive. On to the playoff race next then, and West Bromwich Albion have Millwall away before a home game against Watford, an away trip to Stoke before home games against Rotherham and Sunderland, back-to-back away games against Leicester and Sheffield Wednesday before a home game against Preston. For me, I look at West Brom's final 3 games and think that's probably their trickiest run in the final 8 games here, but if they can pick up loads of points in the next 5, which I do expect them to, then they probably could be over the line before facing Leicester City away and Sheffield Wednesday away, who will both be fighting for a lot. Norwich City host Plymouth Argyle after the international break before an away trip to the King Power. They then host Ipswich Town, which will be tasty, before away trips to Sheffield Wednesday and Preston, home games against Bristol City and Swansea, and finishing at Birmingham City. Given Norwich City's great home form at the moment, I do expect them to beat Plymouth Argyle, but it's the 4 games there, Leicester, Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday and Preston, with 3 of the 4 of them being away, that could be where the Canaries potentially drop some points. On to Hull City next. They host Stoke City before away trips to Leeds and Cardiff. Then it's back-to-back home games against Middlesbrough and QPR, followed by back-to-back away games at Watford and Coventry, with Ipswich at home being their final home game and Plymouth being their final away game. Once again, it's a pretty mixed bag there for Hull City, but with 5 of their 9 games being away from home, and with those away games being Leeds, Coventry, Watford, Cardiff and Plymouth, I don't expect it to be an easy ride for Hull City here, but they are a good team and they might just find themselves sneaking in there. As for Coventry City, it's Huddersfield away and Cardiff at home before Leeds United at home and Southampton away, 2 massive games there. Then it's away to Birmingham for Coventry before back-to-back home games against Ipswich and Hull before an away trip to Blackburn and a home game against QPR. I must add that the Ipswich Town game is going to be rescheduled as of recording right now because Coventry City still need to fit in their FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United. It's a busy schedule for the Sky Blues there, but we need to have a good run to make it. In my opinion, if Coventry City want to make the top 6 this season, I do think we probably need to win 6 of the final 9. As for the final teams we're going to mention in the playoff race, Preston host Rotherham before away trips to Birmingham and Watford. They then host Huddersfield and Norwich before away games against Southampton and QPR. Then it's at home to Leicester and away to West Brom. For me, Preston's games get gradually harder. You look at the first 4 there and I don't see why Preston can't go for maximum points, but then Norwich, Southampton, QPR, Leicester and West Brom is a very difficult final run-in. But with North End playing the likes of Norwich and West Brom, it does give them the opportunity to close the gap on them. Finally, with Middlesbrough and Cardiff, Middlesbrough go away to Southampton. They host Sheffield Wednesday and Swansea before away games at Hull and Ipswich. Then it's Leeds at home, Cardiff away and Watford at home. Some tricky games in there for Middlesbrough, but as we say, they just need to win as many as they can. The same applies for Cardiff, who host Sunderland, go away to Coventry, host Hull, go away to Birmingham and Millwall, host Southampton and Middlesbrough and go away to Rotherham. For me, if Cardiff City can beat both Coventry and Hull City, that will throw themselves kicking and screaming right into the playoff conversation, beating those teams they are competing with. So then guys, they are the final fixtures for the teams chasing promotion in the EFL Championship this season. What are my final thoughts and my hunch right now on what will happen? Well, as I said, I think it'll be 2 of the top 4 to get automatically promoted this season. Right now, the form is telling me to go with Leeds and Ipswich. the quality is making me think consider Leicester and Southampton a bit more. Southampton here are the anomaly. They are a few points behind, but those games in hand do still give them a chance. Right now, I'm just going to say I think it'd be 2 of the top 3. I think Southampton are definitely still worth mentioning, but between Leeds, Leicester and Ipswich is still just too close. It's going to be a case of who's going to crack first, who's going to wobble, because I think if any of the top 3 here just lose 2 more games this season, that could be enough to see them not make the top 2 at the end of the season. As for the playoff race, obviously we can make the observation that Southampton upwards are going to at least get top 6. I think West Brom will join them. Even if they just drew all of their final 8 games, they'd get to 74 points, which should be enough. It's really too close between Norwich, Hull, Coventry and Preston. With Middlesbrough and Cardiff, they just need to keep winning, and then we'd see where they are in a few weeks' time, because right now they're on the outside of it. But with the games in hand, it makes it too close to call. I think with the Coventry City versus Hull City game, which is right towards the end of the season, it could be winner takes all in that one. A draw in that game would really benefit Norwich. And as for Preston, they need to win as many of their next coming games as they can, because they've got a really difficult run in. My head is telling me West Brom get over the line, and it's too close to say for 6th place right now. We might get a better idea of the picture a few games after the international break. So that wraps it up, guys. Like I say, it's really difficult to unpick. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, especially if you have a team in the race. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like. It's free to do, and make sure to subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.